Good morning, Jared. Yeah, things are a lot quieter than they were yesterday, and certainly overnight it's quieted down a little bit. You know, they said that everyone had already arrived in New Orleans, but not everyone, because when we were driving in, we saw a couple of coaches full of people, and they seemed to be really excited and in good spirits that they were just off the ship and on land, because a lot of them were waving to us as we drove by in the WEAR truck. So everyone seems to be in good spirits, just that they're off the ship. Maybe they're not at their final destination yet, and that's probably going to happen later today, but for now they seem to be feeling good, and I do believe we do have new images and video off of the ship, just so we can get a visual idea of what the conditions were. We've heard a lot of stories and experiences from people who were on board. Now we get to actually see what they were living in, what the conditions were like. Even though they are in better spirits today, this is kind of what they had to deal with for the last few days. And also, as people were disembarking overnight, when the ship docked at about 10 o'clock until the last person got off about 2:30 our time, Anthony Purra talked to a lot of them to get an idea of what their experience was like. So that's some of the reaction from people as they were disembarking. We did kind of get a mixed bag in talking to our overnight reporters. Some people were just excited to be off. Some people thought that Carnival did a good job of, helping them get through a difficult situation. And other people, most of them that were on land, seemed to be really upset with Carnival and how the communication process was going.
I would well imagine. Do we know what happens next with the ship itself?
Yeah, the ship is actually going to stay here. It's going to a shipyard here in Mobile, and that's where they're going to do the repairs necessary to get it back on the move again. And we did hear from the CEO of Carnival last night, who said that the ship's crew is actually going to stay with the ship here in Mobile while those repairs are being made. Everyone else, of course, being shuttled or flown or bused home, and I'm sure that's going to be another long journey for them, but at least they've had, hopefully by now, a nice shower and a hot meal. Jared?
Oh, I bet that felt good. All right, Lainey, we'll talk to you a little bit later on this morning.
Yeah, Jared, really quickly though, I just want to tell you, just about not even 4 seconds ago, we saw a septic truck kind of pulling in here, and we can only guess that they're part of the cleanup efforts of the actual ship. Now, as for the passengers themselves and all the crew members, everyone's disembarked, and we have heard that several of the buses have already arrived in New Orleans. They're being greeted at the hotels there, Hilton specifically, reporting that the people were still waiting in long lines just to check in. Remember, you have to give your credit card for incidentals, and that takes time for everyone to get into their room. So have the majority of the people even had a shower yet? Have they had a hot meal? That's the question at this hour. You thought that it would be all over once they landed and once they docked. May not be true. So the journey is still going to be long, especially for people who have come from long distances to get on that cruise. We spoke to people yesterday who were coming to pick up their family, and they were from Indiana. That's a 20-hour drive, and they planned on making that drive. They didn't want their loved ones to get on a plane to go home. Jared, I heard you mention that the whole ordeal was over, but for a lot of people it isn't. Remember, a lot of people are either in New Orleans or on their way to Texas, or they're still in the buses on the way. And just about 5 minutes ago, I saw one of the coach buses leave here, and it did have a few passengers on board. So I'm left to wonder, what were they doing here so late? I'm thinking, remember that some of the passengers received a letter from Carnival asking them to stay afterward and speak with them about what the conditions were like, what Carnival can do, what went wrong, what went well. And so we also have some video and some new images off of the ship. And this is probably some of the things that they were passing along to Carnival cruises about what the conditions were like for them and what exactly they went through. There's a lot of speculation before they got off and before they docked about what was going on the ship before anyone could really get in touch with their loved ones on board. Then the story started trickling out from people who were actually on board, and of course Carnival wanted them to share those experiences directly with the company. What they're going to do in terms of restitution after hearing those stories, that we don't know yet. But again, a lot of people still were here. I'd say there were about 7 people on board. They looked exhausted from what I could see just in the windows, and just like everyone on board, Janice Fernandez spoke with some people on board, some women who they were on a girls trip, and it all started the right way, and of course we all know on Sunday it started to go south. Jared, I mentioned that some of the passengers received that letter from Carnival Cruises asking them to stay. We still don't know how many of the customers were given that letter or how they were chosen. Even the people on board saying they saw a couple of the letters floating around, they didn't receive one, and they weren't really sure how they selected which passengers were going to get that letter. Jared, you're asking what's next, and a lot of things are next. A lot of people are still on the road, not home quite yet. They're being bussed out and shuttled out, flown home from there. So it's still going to be a long journey before they probably slip into their own beds. I want to give you an update kind of what we've been seeing this morning. About a half an hour ago, we saw some septic tanks roll up to the ship, and you're guessing, of course, that it's probably as part of the cleanup. We also have seen buses leaving this morning with passengers. About 15 minutes ago, we saw a bus leave full of people, and it may be because a lot of passengers received a letter from Carnival Cruises asking, we'd like to speak with you so you can tell us your experience. How did we do? What were positives? What were negatives? What would you like to see from us? And so those might have been the passengers that received those letters. And then about 5 minutes ago, I saw another bus pulling up. So now that's making me wonder if there are actually still more passengers here. About 5-6 hours ago, Carnival sent their last tweet. They've been silent since then, saying all passengers have disembarked. So while no one's actually on the ship, a lot of people are still here in Mobile. And that, of course, was our own Anthony Perez speaking to people as they got off the ship to get an idea of what the conditions were like. And new for you this morning, we actually have new images and video coming off of the ship from people who were on board sharing their experiences so we could get a more visual, if you want to see that. But it kind of puts pictures to what we've been hearing from people on board. Jared?
Lena, what happens to the Triumph now? What is next for the ship?
Well, now it's staying in Mobile. It's actually going to a shipyard here, and the crew is staying with it. They're staying here in Mobile as well until all of the repairs are done so that they can get it moving again. But that's going to take some time. Remember that Carnival canceled all of the of this ship's cruises through mid-April, April 12th, if memory serves.
All right, Lena, thank you very much. Live from
Jared, I want to talk to you about what it means here locally in Mobile. Yesterday, I spoke with the president of the Visitors and Convention Bureau, and he was saying he thought this was a great opportunity to get people to realize that we do have a terminal here in Mobile, that the city is flexible and willing and able to handle things like this, and perhaps maybe even get Carnival Cruises back. And it seems like that might be in line with what's happening. A lot of the families that I spoke with yesterday who came to Mobile said they couldn't be more pleased that they've never been to Mobile. They didn't realize how beautiful it is and how gracious everyone was, knowing that no one here really owed them anything, that weren't a part of Carnival, but the reception that they received really won them over. Also, the ship is going to be here for a while. It's going to BAE Shipyard, and so that's going to give a little bit of work to the shipyard there and the people there. Also, some of the crew is going to be staying with the ship during the repairs, and so they're going to have to stay here locally at hotels and such. So it might be a little bit of a boost that the people here in Mobile were hoping for. And of course, the passengers so excited to be anywhere on land, and it just so happened that it was here in Mobile. And Christina Leavenworth talked to some of those people last night as they were getting off of the ship. And Jared, I do want to kind of get you updated with what we've seen this morning. We got here about 4:30, and right away we hadn't even got out of the truck yet, and we saw one of those buses that you were talking about full of passengers. And again, that was at 4:30. Now since then we've seen about 6 or 7 buses leave. The last 3 I just saw leave about 5 minutes ago, right after another. Those were empty, so probably all of the passengers have left here in the Mobile area, just here at the port. Some of the other buses were just a couple of passengers here and there. So there were some people still here this morning. A lot of people still on the road. We have heard reports that a lot of passengers have also arrived in New Orleans, and some, of course, are on their way to Texas. Now, when we talk about what was it like on the ship, we had some new images and video for our viewers this morning, and it really gives us a sense of what things were like on board. And then you have to wonder, because I know you're a dad, what is it like when you have little children with you? And we did hear some reports of them making announcements, asking for extra formula and extra Pampers on board from other families to share because they hadn't packed enough. And Janice Fernandez last night, as people got off, talked to some of the kids about what it was like for them on board. And you can always count on kids to make the best of things and interpret it in their own way. As it's just a big adventure. We're all camping. This is really exciting. So you get a real sense of the difference, because of course, a lot of our viewers I know a lot of you are parents, and you're thinking, well, my concern would be of my child, and I wouldn't want them in those conditions. Jared? Hey, good morning, Jared. I just wanted to give you an update. We've seen a lot of work already. We see some septic tanks and trucks driving up to the ship, and a little bit earlier we saw some people on the decks, and already, of course, they've got to start that long, arduous task of cleaning it. And it does seem that all of the passengers have disembarked and have left the area. The last 3 buses that we saw leave were completely empty.